I do not care for the opinions of others, nor the foresight required to better understand what they are going for. I am speaking purely on the horrendous excuse of delivering information, among other things. So please, spare your time wasting away in the comment section defending or attempting to rebut my points, because this shit is inexcusable. The very core of my problems with episode 1 lies with how poorly it is both written and paced in such an insufferable manner. I felt it necessary to stop entirely and speak my mind about this. Now, I am a patient individual who can sit through many hours of content, but the length of ReZero's first episode is frankly unwarranted. This thing is nearly a fucking hour in length for episode 1, the point in which you'd want to stuff as much important information as needed. This is the most excessive length I've ever had to suffer through. Before I get into comparing it to literally anything else, I feel it fair to view it in isolation. Because if you were completely blind to watching this show, hearing nothing of it, you'd be either bored or mildly invested until the end where the big stuff happens. But a big question I initially had after suffering through episode 1 was, how much did episode 1 adapt? To my surprise, it was half of the volume it was based off of. I'm not making this shit up. I hate to admit checking Reddit of all places, but according to this one patient fan, episode 1 covered 118 pages of the light novel, with the other half being covered by the second and third episode. I am not a screenwriter. I understand it is difficult to adapt books, especially of the Japanese variety, but this is an example of not how to do it. Like it or hate me, that's fine. But understand what they've done is translate word for word from the book and changed nothing. At least as far as I know. The author of the very book was heavily involved with the first episode and a handful of others providing input and the like. So, I am guessing they are partly to blame for why they did such an awful job of delivering integral information that could have been done in such a shorter time span. Let's face the facts. Almost nothing happens in episode 1 that warrants the 50-minute length. It does not need to take 50 minutes to establish what is essentially the first 15 minutes of an episode. The start of the episode is from the prologue of the light novel and takes 1 minute with confusing visions in between that happens later in the first half hour of the show. Subaru just rubs his eyes in and is summoned to this new world. He runs around a bit, encounters some thieves, one of which is the instigator of this entire episode. The thugs beat up the protagonist, is saved by Emilia, who felt pity for him. He wakes up to the lapse of the fairy who helped Emilia beat up the thugs who ran away. It takes 10 minutes for this to happen. The protagonist, being infatuated with the half-elf woman, manages to convince helping her find her insignia. We go on a 12-minute detour around the city, attempting to find the person who stole it. They help a lost child find her mother and are off looking again. Said child is the reason both he and Emilia have a lead to the rundown suburbs to possibly find the thief. They find the hideout where the thief should be, only to find dead bodies. Our protagonist is slow and gets stabbed, preceded by Emilia, who also gets backstabbed. He reaches out to her in desperation to hold her hand, and we time travel back to the point in which Subaru had been summoned. We are now half an hour into the episode. Being the stupid simp that he is, runs back to the place where he had died to find the person who was dead alive and well. Subaru waits to make an offer for the item he needs to trade, since all of the shit he brought with him holds no value aside from his phone, which can take pictures. His bargain is good, though he has to compete with another customer who wants the item. Subaru, by a mere chance of the phone costing likely a bit more than the 20 holy coins the woman offered, then celebrates a little. But then he retardedly spouts what he's going to do. Return it to Satella, the fake name Emilia had provided him before. The woman turns out to be the killer who slaughtered him and Emilia before, as well as the old dude and thief. This is 43 minutes in, by the way. A fight occurs which lasts 5 minutes, ending in Subaru, once again, respawning to the point he did before. At 48 minutes, he sees Emilia and calls her Satella, causing her to hate him greatly due to the alias given before. The episode ends at 49 minutes, jumping into the credits. Now, I am aware that what I've described is from the director's cut of the show. However, it does not excuse the fact episode 1 was split into 2 parts. Even as 2 episodes separately, it wastes effectively the same amount of time, less considering it was apparently censored. What we have here is a wasted episode that is worse than slow-paced. It has no idea how the fuck to efficiently feed the viewer sufficient information. This falls to the source material not being adapted at all. You may complain that I skimmed over certain pieces of dialogue, but the thing is, all of it is shallow and bloated. There is almost nothing here to really latch onto, nor information that Subaru can use either. The dialogue throughout informs us very little about the world we're in, and I couldn't even remember the name of the capital or the city since it was so dragged out. There is a clear difference between what is good and bad exposition that I couldn't name a single piece of it in episode 1. There is no exchange made in this that helps us nor the protagonist key into things because of an issue I will be tearing to shreds momentarily. Because there are several points to where we are shown things and they simply talk about the things, but at no point do they connect. Why? Simple. Nothing we learn in those instances matter and are rendered useless by the time Subaru is on his second respawn. But if we had to compare how this works, think Undertale and its save point system. However, they aren't self-aware, and our protagonist is as thoughtful as the bodies he left behind. And if you are looking carefully, you may find the characters are almost comparable in terms of personality, since only 2 characters matter, Subaru and Emilia, whose name we don't even get in episode 1. I've held off long enough. I need to get this out of my damn system. Subaru is single-handedly the worst and most retarded protagonist I have ever had the displeasure of knowing. My opinions of the character had been almost neutral until I watched this episode, since I had only heard nothing but praise of the show and books to some extent. But so far, he is not only proven stupid, but his personality is that of the super simp shut-in who thinks anime is real and believes he is worth something, when clearly he has no friends nor any signs of social development of any grade out there. Keep in mind, I suffered through Steven Universe when it aired, which is basically propaganda at this point, and had less to suffer by comparison, but hate almost equally. The thing that stands out most with Subaru is that he expects everything to be handed to him, along with how the world he is in functions. Yet, he fails to realize in both resets that he had been sent back to a previous state in time, which the events loop almost. I genuinely cannot think of any other protagonist that is as stupid as Subaru. You can say what you will of Harem King Kirito, but at least he knew what he got himself into when he was stuck in the game. He knew what to do, but here we are absolutely naked in terms of a driving plot. Really think about that for a minute. Our summoned hero has no actual goals for us the viewers, nor himself to work toward. You could probably argue something with what happens later, but the fact that episode 1 failed to properly establish a driving plot to either get out of this world or complete a particular task. For reference of a few other shows I have seen, Kirito's goal is to save everyone trapped in the game by literally finishing the MMO. Naofumi Iwatani's goal in Shield Hero is to fend off the waves and return home without dying first. What's Subaru's? That dumbass can't really think long enough to determine anything since he had a stupid fantasy in his mind that contributes to nothing. Adventure? No, not really. Mystery! The problem with it is that we lack such important information for not just us to use, but for our protagonist to pick up on, which won't be happening anytime soon. From what I peeked into some summaries and questions online, 7 episodes later, which translates to about 3 more hours in the director's cut, it also takes him nearly 2/3 of season 1 just to reflect on how stupid and unintelligible of a sorry excuse of carbon dioxide he is. The biggest problem of all of this is just how little there actually is for me to discuss, since everything here is just shallow and uninteresting. You got the shocking gore, sure, but that wears off pretty quickly when you compare it to the real shit. I'm talking Gears of War, any zombie flick by George Romero, Doom 2016, Corpse Party, Ebe, Silent Hill. The list can go on. Shield Hero handles gore, violence, and some brutal deaths better than ReZero has in this episode. All since anything that happens in ReZero can be reset and tried again, cutting away any tension. If anything, this makes the show rather troublesome to try and view because you don't know if or when he's going to do something stupid and cause another reset at the supposed spawn point in which everyone forgets who he is. It is because of Subaru I do not think this show is paced very well, if at all, since the events that follow him are exceedingly slow that it feels unnecessary and redundant, because it seems like everyone there is stupid in one way or another. Putting aside the one-noted NPCs we do not need to think about, the world thus far is very shallow, and I could be wrong about that later, should this video do well. And by wrong, I mean it could be something decent or something offensively bad that could use its own refreshing breakdown. I should also note, for the record, as someone who is autistic, I doubt for a second Subaru is autistic, since nothing he exudes seems to fit anything in line with what I've experienced personally, nor anything else I've seen in other severe cases. I'd say he more than likely has ADHD or the shortest attention span you'd see from someone who watches Twitch streamers daily. If you think I seriously need to watch the rest of the director's cut, tell me. And show me through hitting either the like or dislike button and get this video up to 20k, and I'll sit through the rest of season 1 and properly dissect each episode.